Hi, my name is Diana Berrent. I'm the founder of Survivor Corps, and welcome to the Survivor Corps webinar series. We know that you can't always get to the experts, so we're here to bring the experts to you. So this is our sort of 1-year anniversary webinar, which is kind of crazy. Well, it's beyond crazy. I started Survivor Corps on March 24th of last year. We are now the largest COVID movement in the world. We have 160,000 members of our Facebook group. Our website has been inducted into the Library of Congress's Digital History of COVID. We are part of the history of how plasma was used during the COVID crisis. We have generated more research than I can even mention. And it was sort of a hard thing to figure out, how do we mark this 1 year? It's not exactly a celebration, but I'm glad that we all found each other and continue to lift each other up. And so after what has been the most stressful year I think any of us have ever experienced, and that's whether you've had COVID, haven't had COVID, it doesn't matter. This has been quite a year. And so what better way to mark that anniversary than bringing a little calm to our lives? And so we have with us the Chief Medical Officer of Calm, the meditation app. And let me give you a little bit of his bio. And if I didn't feel self-conscious about my own resume before, just listen to this. So this Omar holds a BA in chemistry from the University of Pennsylvania, an MPH with concentration in cancer epidemiology from Yale University, an MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, and an MD from the Georgetown University School of Medicine. Oof, that's impressive. Omar is also a stage 4 cancer survivor, so I think that will help, really relate to a lot of what people are going through right now. Not the same, but anyone who's been through a sort of personal health crisis, I think can relate. And he's currently the Chief Medical Officer and Head of Sales for Calm, leading business-to-business employer and health plan sales. He is passionate about helping people around the globe lead healthier, happier lives by building resilience through better sleep and improved mindfulness. And considering that I am a total stress case and I slept for 3.5 hours last night, I can't think of a better way to spend the next hour. So Omar, take it away.
And thank you so much for that very kind intro. And thank you to you and Suzanne and team for the invitation. Completely humbling to be here speaking and involved in this really important discussion on your year anniversary. COVID, as you said, has changed all of our lives. I've been a clinician for the last 2.5 decades or so, and I have never seen or even thought we'd experience something like this.
Can you tell us a little bit about your clinical background?
Yeah. So I, as you said, my fire that was kind of started in me to really take me down a clinical path started when I was a teenager, and I was afflicted with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a cancer of the lymph nodes that was all over my body. And as a young teenager, I saw the hospital through a very different set of eyes. One in which I saw a minimal amount of innovation, communication. There was at very minuscule levels between departments, and although there was tremendous empathy on a one-on-one relationship among clinicians, it was very difficult to translate that experience through the entire journey as a patient. And so as a bright-eyed 16, 15-year-old, I decided, hey, I need to change this one day. And, really didn't know how at that point. And, knock on wood, I came out of that experience stronger with a tremendous fire and passion to be able to change healthcare. And it took me down a road in which I spent tremendous time with just some amazing people along the journey in the public health world, spent time at the FDA, spent time obviously in various academic capacities, various research capacities. and trended toward kind of a hybrid of surgery and radiology, and really specializing more into things that were more minimally invasive.
But nephrology, correct?
Correct. So, and for me, the real kind of voice in my head was always, well, as I'm interacting on a one-on-one patient level, is what about the collective? What about the larger population? How do we think about data? How do we think about innovation? And that led me really kind of step into the more business side of medicine, and the innovation side, in which, again, there's, I think, as much of a tremendous need as one-on-one care. And when the two come together, it's a really beautiful thing. So I feel very humbled to be in a position I am now, where we're helping, hundreds of millions of people around the world right now to live happier, healthier lives. And, hope over the next hour, we can talk about some really interesting, issues and ideas, and run through a number of different topics around resilience and mental fitness. And so, would love to start, Diana, with just a brief exercise, if I may, to, ground us, and kind of synonymous with how we think about with calm. It is about slowing down to go faster. It is about taking a pause to be your best self. And so I'm going to just share my screen here, and I'm going to go off my headset for a second so that you can actually hear my audio.
And it looks like screen share is disabled. So if we can enable that, that would be super helpful. Are you able to hear me there? Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Okay.
Welcome to this 3-minute guided body scan. Start by sitting comfortably with a straight back and close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths in and out to ground you in this moment. Feeling your breath as it enters your body and as it leaves your body. As the breath flows in, follow it in. Then as the breath flows out, follow it through to its completion. With each out-breath, let your body become heavy, sinking deeper into your chair. Now bring your attention to your head, feeling into your scalp, the forehead, and temples. Observe your eyes, cheeks, your ears, jaw, and chin. Breathing in and out, letting all tensions release. Now lower your focus to the neck and shoulders, letting them soften. Bring awareness to your arms, extending it down towards the wrists, the palms, and fingers. Observing any sensations that arise on the surface of the skin or deeper within. Now come to the chest and torso area, being aware of the abdomen, and bringing your awareness around to the back, observing your upper back and lower back. And if you notice any intensity here, try directing the breath into those areas, letting them soften. Then bring your attention to your pelvis and hips, and scanning the legs, the ankles, the feet, and the toes. Direct your breath into these areas, relaxing into stillness. Notice how paying attention to the entire length of your body feels. Then, when you're ready, bring your attention back to the room and slowly open your eyes. Enjoy this relaxed, peaceful state and take it with you into your day.
I nearly fell asleep.
Actually, isn't that a great way to start your day?
Yeah. Or end.
Oh, completely.
I use Calm, and so I associate that voice with the sleep stories that I listen to at night. So you nearly just lost me for the rest of the webinar. I
I love
completely
it.
associate that voice with putting me to sleep.
Yeah, Tamara is fantastic. And the beauty here is within the Calm experience, we have so many different voices. Give me 1 second here. Let me just reconnect my audio and we should be golden again. Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Perfect. All right, perfect. Excellent. All right, let me share back again and we'll jump back in. Yeah, it really is a fantastic way to start your day. We don't pause enough in our days, and I know I definitely don't as we're going through our days. And to be able to really do that, take 2 or 3 minutes out from what is quite a very, very busy day can be tremendously powerful and helpful. I wanted to dive in, if I may, Diana, and really kind of start touching on a bit about how we're wired as human beings for stress and anxiety, how we deal with it.
Seismologist, yes, I want to hear from like a medical sort of perspective.
Sure. And so when we think about, and sorry, having some audio issues, but when we think about stress and anxiety, they're actually interesting. There actually is a spectrum of how we handle stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety are all around us, always in our everyday. Regardless of who we are, regardless of where we live, it's always ever present. And little bits of stress and anxiety actually can be somewhat helpful. It actually can help you be super focused. It can help you actually be at your best. But it's very easy to kind of get to a tipping point in which stress and anxiety can put us in a situation in which we're completely overwhelmed. And I want to talk a bit about that. When we think of ourselves as humans, we truly are hardwired to deal with stress and anxiety. We have, as we've all probably heard, the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems that exist, that are basically our circuitry that help us handle various situations that are in front of us. We're wired as to deal with threats. And so, way back when we think about as human beings, we'd be running down a path and there'd be a saber-toothed tiger behind us. We need to be able to immediately run away, take ourselves out of that threatening situation and be able to get to a safe place. When that happens, what the body does is it revs up its sympathetic nervous system. You'll start to experience, and I'm sure as I describe these, they'll sound very familiar, but you'll start to experience sweaty palms. Your heart rate will rise, your breath will quicken, and your blood pressure will go up. And that all results in you being ultimately very, very focused in that moment itself. It allows you to escape the threat and allows you to get to a safe place, and you're extremely sharp. If we've ever been late to a test or to a meeting, and you get that little bit of kind of extra stress, you'll see that for the first couple minutes of whatever encounter you're in, that test, that meeting, your mind is like super wired, regardless of how sleepy you were all day. And that's really the sympathetic nervous system that has revved up our fight or flight response. But if that's continued, if that stressor is there for a long period of time, for example, what we're experiencing right now during COVID, where we're experiencing stress and anxiety at a very high level, and we're experiencing it in extremely long periods that are sustained, then what happens is the body gets overwhelmed, your brain gets overwhelmed. And so your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that passes information, your prefrontal cortex, it becomes inefficient. It essentially becomes cloudy. And your prefrontal cortex, where you're having all your decision-making capacity, is really not functioning optimally. So we enter our days cloudy, we enter our days with kind of impaired decision-making capacity. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well, Diana, right? At times, and we've all kind of been through this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think multiple times a day.
Yeah, it's something that can plague all of us, and something that we all have experienced on some level. So there is this window, we call it kind of a window of tolerance that was described in the literature, that is a window that you want to stay within to really be functioning optimally. Within this window, you're calm, you're safe, you think optimally, you're able to decision make, you're able to sleep, you're able to do all the things that we want to do. But reality is, right now, most of us are actually in that upper panel, especially, many of your members who are dealing with some really challenging sequela post-COVID, right? And many of us who are living in a very different COVID-related world, which is that we are revved up. Our systems are overwhelmed. We have this kind of interesting uneasiness about us and a level of stress and anxiety that sometimes we can't pinpoint. It's almost like you're hyper vigilant and you want to panic over every little thing. Frankly, that's somewhat normal given the environment that we all are in. And what I found with even colleagues and friends and family members is acknowledging that we're all in this, and that feeling those symptoms actually is normal, and then talking about how you actually build coping mechanisms to deal with it can be unbelievably powerful, for sure.
Can I ask you a question, Omar? So knowing that that COVID obviously passes the blood-brain barrier, and knowing that encephalitis is a very common part of acute COVID, how is that? How is the virus actually affecting our brains in all of this? How does that tie in to just the compounding stress of the pandemic and dealing with all of the medical issues? How does that actual neurological change affect all of these functions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. What's interesting is we're in the midst of experiencing the acute, chronic, long-term effects, both short and long-term, obviously, as it's happening, and it's being studied now. So we have some answers to things, and we don't have answers to everything. When you think about encephalitis and you think about that concept of kind of more global brain infection, more global inflammatory processes that you're undergoing, that obviously all puts stress on the body physically. We're talking here a lot about non-physical stress, but physical stress compounds this even further. So every single pathway that we talk about that helps us deal with stress and anxiety, every single ability of us to focus, which is super critical, and stay aligned on, keeping ourselves in that safe zone, is actually made much more difficult when you have a physical stressor as well. It's extremely challenging. And so, we don't know necessarily what the long-term effects of that are going to be, how long it's going to last, how when those infections have permeated to that level, will those symptoms subside in X number of months, years, etc. It's not well studied yet. And that's where what groups like you are doing, which is collecting long-term cross-sectional data around this, is immensely important. It's hard to, if you take a very basic analogy, if you have a headache, it's hard to think straight. It's hard to actually do anything, right? If you have a migraine, it's even worse. Now, combine that with some type of infection, such as some of the sequelae from COVID, in which you're actually having infection that's spread to the covering the brain and other aspects of our anatomy, neurologic anatomy, that's going to be compounded even further. And so, this is where it's important to support both the physical manifestations, but also not forget that we need to support the behavioral and emotional manifestations as well. I think the two go hand in hand. And this goes not just for COVID, but on many aspects of medicine, chronic disease in general.
That makes sense. That's interesting.
This word I have on the slide is a word that I think has been an interesting front of mind topic for many of us, whether you've been affected by COVID or not, which is sleep. And sleep has been a challenge for almost all of us for the past year. Whenever you have unknown, whenever you have your mind racing on a million things, whenever you're not feeling well, sleep is challenged. And when sleep is jeopardized, you end up actually really ramping up your levels of stress and anxiety. Numerous studies
found that sleep disturbances are one of the most common, commonly reported COVID symptoms. I know that people talk about fatigue a lot, but I had the most intense insomnia for months on end.
That's unbelievable. How did you deal with it yourself?
I kept on working on Survivor Core.
And that actually does help, is immersing yourself in various activities. We don't sleep for a lot of different reasons. And one of the reasons you don't sleep is because you can't shut your brain off. It's immensely difficult, right, when you go to bed. What we found to be immensely helpful is replacing your thoughts with something else that's calming and soothing. I'll play here in a few minutes what we call a calm sleep story, which is really an experience in which individuals can listen to a story in a certain cadence, a certain tone, akin to when we were children, actually. And it actually helps you replace the millions of things that are racing through your head with something that's much more soothing. And you fall asleep. You fall asleep faster, enter REM more predictably, and get a better night's sleep. And that can be so powerful, whether you're dealing with battling COVID, whether you're dealing with a sequela, whether you're someone that's just dealing with the society we're living in today and all the different pressures that we have around us as we're, going back to work environment and school environment, all these different aspects. You enter your day then really with your brain being much more optimally functioning. Your amygdala is actually more efficient, able to really make solid decisions, and you're able to enter your day with clarity. And it's interesting, if you don't do that, if you enter your day with poor sleep, you're going to actually have a stressful and anxious day that's going to compound on itself, and you're going to sleep worse the next night. It becomes a vicious cycle completely.
I can attest to that. I will also tell you that I think my favorite sleep story is the Matthew McConaughey one.
There you go. That is a
Better than
regular
having Matthew McConaughey's talk you to sleep.
I love it. We have many requests for Matthew to make appearances, but yes.
For good reason, he's good at it.
Exactly. I think the next favorite is probably Harry Styles, in which we had a crazy number of people just writing in and downloading Calm and engaging as well. It's interesting. That's part of what makes our experience engaging. And I think with any mental behavioral health experience, it's important to make it feel friendly. It's
Like
not, doesn't have to be scary.
The Bob Ross ones are awesome.
Hilarious. Bob Ross is funny. We have John McEnroe in there talking about the rules of tennis, which just cracks me up, or Ferris Bueller's teacher, which is quite funny. Yeah, super interesting. I'm going to skip this slide for a second. But what I am going to touch on is, despite stress and anxiety, there are ways that we can actually, meet stress and anxiety head on. And it's unbelievably important to not just put our heads in the sand, but to really kind of take a step back and pause and start to engage in activities in which we can build what we call resilience and mental fitness, which is really this concept of, let's try to create an environment for ourselves in which we can better understand stress and anxiety, and in which we can then build coping mechanisms around that. And that can be unbelievably important. It helps us meet challenges head on. It helps us see stress and anxiety, see stressful and anxious situations, and then be able to apply various different coping mechanisms to those. And we'll talk a bit about that. This concept of mental fitness is, I think it's interesting because people say it's relatively new, and we may be at the tip of that here at COM, but reality is this concept of mental fitness and resilience has always been around us. We just haven't really put it as a priority. We haven't really had great engaging tools that we can utilize to really build it. And it hasn't taken the same priority as it has for physical health. Physical health, you would never, just focus on those individuals that have a heart attack, for example. You focus on the whole population and you talk about prevention. You talk about nutrition and diet and exercise. And it's interesting. I gave a talk last week I titled it, What About the Other 80%? We talk about 1 in 5 people being afflicted with stress and anxiety type disorders and depressive disorders, but there's another 80% of us who experience stress and anxiety every day. And shouldn't we be developing levels of coping mechanisms for everyone? Prevention, in a way. And, for those of you that have had COVID, for those of you that have COVID, for those of you that are just living in society today in which it is a COVID-dominated society in terms of how we're acting, the framework in which we have to take every daily action that we have, it's really important for us to start building a number of these mechanisms so that when stress and anxiety comes, whether it's here now or it comes in the future, we're able to deal with it. So this concept of the mind like a muscle, what we really mean by this is, there's a lot of literature behind to build resilience, to build capacity for your mental capacity, and to really kind of build up your emotional state. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like you go out and run a marathon tomorrow. You train for it. And it's the same thing with your mind. It's incremental resilience exercises. It's building mindfulness. It's incorporating pauses into your day. It's doing all of that on a continuous basis. And as we said, awareness is key. Right now, it's interesting because everything is stressful and anxious. And so awareness is a funny term because we're all aware all the time. But drilling in deeper is specific situations, communications, reactions with colleagues, families, friends, and how we pause from there. And let me pause there before I kind of jump in the calm. Diana, any thoughts around any of that or questions that come to mind?
I think that my first question is on behalf of all the folks who are having brain fog issues. And can this sort of mental training help with that, do you think?
It can tremendously. I mean, when we think about why somebody feels cloudy, the first thing I always ask is, how did you sleep last night? Honestly, that's the number one question I always ask. Sleep is the foundation. And frankly, the number one reason a lot of people will come in and touch a behavioral health system at all, or interact with COM, for example. So creating a situation, an environment where someone can actually start to have a good foundation and a starting point of great sleep is step one. I think, as you said, there is a preponderance far in excess of the majority of those individuals affected with COVID or who are recovering from COVID that have sleep disturbance. That is a number one ingredient to you actually not being able to think clearly. So building routine around that, and we'll talk a bit about that here, is one of the key steps to actually starting to impact that. I think second to that is getting your mind to start focusing on not a lot, but a few. And this is where mindfulness comes in immensely. It's about shutting out external stimuli. It's about understanding that not every situation is going to be perfect. And being able to take a situation that may look difficult, challenging, hard to figure out, especially when you're feeling like, I'm not really in a mindset to understand things very well right now, and unpacking it. And unpacking it's difficult, but when you break things up into their pieces and you see that a situation that looked like it was completely out of control is actually now very controllable. Like, what can I control in this situation? What can I be certain of? Just like take our days, for example. So many people are paralyzed by the world right now. We're working at home and we're living in the same place. I'm never leaving work. My kids run through. Like right now, my headphones stopped working. Like there's a lot of reasons to be anxious and stressed. But mindfulness helps you focus. Like right now, when my headphones stopped working, I'm focusing on my internet connection is going great. We're having a great dialogue. We're still able to communicate very effectively. Would it be better with headphones? Of course. But I can't control that, but I can control this right now, right? I can control us having an a really deep and interesting conversation. And in our days as individuals, we have a certain end to our day. We can put rigor around our work day so that we actually start work. For some people, it's about getting dressed up as if you're going to work. It's about making your meals and actually going through those important motions. It's about setting an end to your day so that your workday doesn't go on forever.
That's particularly hard to do when we are all working from home. I'm sitting in my bedroom right now. My office is set up in my bedroom, which makes for a wonderful commute, but not necessarily the greatest sleep practices. And it can be very hard to turn off. I'm always amazed when I get an out of office response email. I'm like, where are you? What do you mean? Does that mean you went to the grocery store? Like, what does that mean, an out of office email these days?
Totally.
I find making those barriers very, very difficult.
It is not easy, and you don't have to do it yourself.
On how one does that?
Yeah, it's different for every person. I mean, for me, a couple things. I have a desk that's in my bedroom and a desk in my living room, and both of those are areas that are my personal spaces per se, right? Here I'm in my conference room, but it's hard when it's your personal space. What I have found useful to me is I actually dress a little bit differently when I'm at work. And that forces my mind into this interesting mindset where it's like, oh, this isn't playtime right now. This is work. So, okay, that helps. I force myself and work hard on it, and I'm getting better, is I actually stop at some point. So around, 5, 6 p.m. PST, I will put down the computer and I will take the dog out for a walk, and I'll make sure that I exercise every day and have dinner, and I may check email a few times, after that, but I am acting as if I just commuted and came home. And, there is no magic bullet. It's a mindset. If you believe it, it kind of happens. And I try not to I limit when I have calls and things along those lines outside of those hours, because otherwise it's easy to work 24/7 when you're at home. And it's easy to look at that bed and look at that couch and say, well, that's like my office now. That's not fun anymore, right? So I have found that to be a bit helpful. But for everyone, it's a little bit different. Friends of mine have asked me the same questions about their kids. They have a 10-year-old, and how does a 10-year-old feel engaged in a virtual environment? And it is about them packing their backpack. It is about them actually having a little area set up for them, even if it's still in the same room, but they have a little bit of structure around it. They've dressed up, they've had their breakfast, they stop for lunch, and they're going out to lunch by going to the kitchen and actually having a meal they sit down for. Like, sounds maybe silly, but it actually really works.
It's funny. I thought my daughter is doing school from home, and my son is in physical school every day. And so I found my daughter recently doing Zoom school from her brother's room. She's turned it into her daytime office.
Awesome.
One, I think she liked the background better, but I don't think she's getting a room rater score on her Zoom school. But but I think that it was that natural inclination to try to find a separate space that was, not her bedroom, to make that distinction.
Exactly. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yep. Exactly. Let me walk through a little bit of calm here. I want to, since you mentioned Matthew, let's play Matthew a little bit for everyone, just so you get a taste.
You don't have to ask me twice. I like the Wizard of Oz was good. I listened to that one last night.
I'm Matthew McConaughey. Tonight I'll be reading a special sleep story called Wonder.
And so, yeah, whether it's Matthew or who else did you mention? You mentioned Bob Ross.
Well, Bob Ross. That's I was trying the ASMR, AMS. What is that?
ASMR. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about that? I know I'm sort of intrigued but confused by it.
Yeah, I'm not an expert for sure. I mean, it's all about tuning, again, tones and imagery, so that it's quite relaxing. You see here, actually, when I stop moving my mouse, we go to imagery. The connection of imagery and sound and certain tones is unbelievably powerful. I mean, that's what's behind a lot of our music. So, whether you're listening to Keith Urban or any of our music here, what's interesting is, played against our backgrounds, it's really quite surreal. And that's really where, whether it be ASMR or so many different other, I think, things that people are working on right now, that just have you in touch with kind of your brain relaxes completely. Kind of get lost in that for the next 45 minutes, for sure. Very, very, very interesting from my point of view. But, this is what resilience is about. Resilience is about getting yourself in that mindset. And it's also, for us, the way we've kind of broached it into the mainstream, and where I think it'd be immensely valuable for all of your members and all of us out there, is it's about developing mindfulness through daily stories, through celebrities and athletes and normal people walking around who have stories that we can relate to. And whether you're a beginner or you're somebody who's been engaged in mindfulness for decades, or whether you're a child or somebody who's more mature in ages, there is a content, there's narrators for you. And that's where, whatever experience you're engaging with, those are one of the key ingredients, is that you're looking for experiences that we can all relate to. I think when we're feeling stressed and anxious, when we're feeling foggy, when we're unable to sleep, we need to not only have an experience we can lean on, but we need something that we can all relate to. And that's really where experiences like this can come in tremendously powerful.
Can meditation be used to mitigate symptoms that biomedicine hasn't been able to treat?
You know, it's interesting. So, numerous studies have shown that meditation can actually affect the immune system. And, you know, it's not surprising because if we're in a more relaxed state, if we have lower stress and anxiety levels, our immune system functions better. There are tons of research around that. And, you know, that's been studied in all kinds of heterogeneous populations. And so, you know, I would say that stress and anxiety support through meditation and mindfulness is a critical aspect and should be a critical aspect of any physical health treatment. Whether you're going through an oncologic treatment, you're going through an infectious disease treatment like with COVID or others. It's interesting, and especially with pain disorders. We know with pain disorders, for example, that if you're not in a relaxed state, pain meds won't actually touch you. They won't actually really affect you that much. You'll actually have to really kind of amp up dosages and frequencies and things along those lines.
Really?
Your body reacts more favorably when you have a support system around you, when you're more relaxed, when you have a positive outlook. All these things actually really matter because stress can incapacitate your immune system. It can lead to weight gain. It can lead to all these interesting physical manifestations that we don't realize. It's not just that it doesn't make you feel as good.
That's incredible. I did not realize that at all. How does it do that? Does it change the chemistry in your brain somehow? I mean, what is the mechanism?
It's a really good question. I am not up to date on the specific mechanism behind it. I mean, when we think about how our immune system reacts, you know, there are neurological inputs, there's hormonal inputs. We know that, you know, there's major hormonal changes with different stress states. So all of that can play in. Diana, how often during a day do you actually take a few moments to just do nothing?
Oh, you don't want to hear the answer.
I'm curious. I think I might know the answer, but I'm curious what the answer is.
Does Twitter count as nothing?
It does not count as nothing. No. You know,
You know the answer.
I do know the answer. Taking a pause is unbelievably important, and for all of your members and all of us, it's unbelievably valuable to just actually do nothing throughout our day sometimes. And we have a little exercise here we can kind of engage in. That let me replay this again. But if we literally take 30 seconds and just follow this breathe bubble and actually just take a deep breath in, deep breath out. And imagine doing this for 30, 60 seconds a day. It's absolutely unbelievable. Let's just do this together. It's amazing. You should try it at various times. I like to do it before a meeting, before I have a big event, sometimes just before my day starts. And I focus on something. I pick one thing. And again, back to this concept of, not concept, back to this real issue that many of us face, of feeling cloudy, of feeling somewhat impaired from a decision-making capacity. Being able to help yourself focus on one thing for 60 seconds can truly help you start to really kind of develop just a lot of better decision-making capacity and ability to actually kind of narrow down your scope of what's in front of you. tremendously.
I have found the way that meditation has helped me the most personally is being able to detach from some thoughts. I remember somebody once describing it as sort of training yourself to watch your thoughts go by like you're watching a movie trailer or watching a train go by. And that you don't have to follow every thought, that it's just a thought and you can let it go. And to me, that was a very liberating realization. But of course, in my OCD way, I then became totally obsessive. Should I be breathing through my nose? Should I be breathing through my mouth? What am I doing? I'm sure I'm doing something wrong. How can I be the best meditator possible? So I called my best friend, who's a neurologist, a double board in neurology and psychiatry, and uses meditation in her practice. And she laughed at her and she's like, just breathe, Diana, just breathe.
Totally.
But is it supposed to be your nose or your mouth? Like, are there technical things that matter like that?
It really is what you feel more comfortable with. I mean, for a lot of people, we'll suggest to breathe in, pick one. I like to breathe in through my nose and exhale out through my mouth. And the real key is focusing on that breath, focusing on taking that breath in, really kind of ingesting it. What's happening there is when you're focusing on the breath, you're not focusing on anything else. That's the key, right? So now you're starting,
and you're never leaving it at home. Like, you have it wherever you go.
totally.
The breath is the one thing you can.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And you can do that literally anywhere that you want to be, which can be, again, such a simple thing, but so incredibly valuable, in our everyday. And I'm just going to stop the screen share here just so we can kind of just talk more freely, just in the spirit of time, because I think what's even more important is a number of the really interesting, important questions that you've had people write in about.
Yeah, so here are some questions. A lot of people have lost their senses of taste and smell, and are using essential oils and other treatment plans. Is that something that, if done in tandem with meditation or mindfulness training, do you think that would help some of these efforts? Like, are they complementary?
Yeah, I mean, the number of people I know that, and friends and colleagues who, have to spice everything right now to get any sense of enjoyment from eating is, I've never experienced that, and so it's hard for me to say I know what you're going through.
I didn't experience that either.
Yeah, and I've never experienced that in my entire life. And I haven't had COVID, just for the record. So I haven't. I'm speaking in third party here, but for me, when you're going through things like that, which can be unbelievably stressful, that you can't taste your food, that you can't smell, and not just annoying, but it is stressful and makes you anxious. I think there's obviously, as similar to what we talked about.
It goes back to some of those primal instincts that we were talking about at the very beginning, because if you can't taste in nature, you could ingest a poison. There's a primal reason why it's so upsetting for people, in the same way that the idea of losing a tooth, it has that, which is another very common thing that people are going through right now, and taps into a very primal fear. Because if we were out in nature and lost our teeth, or lost our taste and smell, we would likely die.
Totally. And the thing is, there is, like we described before, there is the treatment of the physical symptoms and supporting that. But then the important piece as well is the stress and anxiety that's coming from those symptoms, right? We can't forget around that. And so, to answer your question, yes, mindfulness, meditation, taking your focus off of that, being able to focus on the positive, is unbelievably important. I went through a somewhat similar thing after chemotherapy, which is I lost feeling in my fingers, in my periphery, and my
Yeah, a
and
lot
my
of people are
toes. And
experiencing peripheral neuropathy.
right, so peripheral neuropathy is, it's scary, right? It's, you feel like not yourself at all. And, I had to distract myself at the time and try to focus on other things. Because otherwise I get wrapped up in it. And you get wrapped up in this. And it then starts affecting sleep, it starts affecting every other part of your life. And so whether it be loss of taste and smell, whether it be ongoing fatigue, whether it be so many different really difficult symptoms that many of your members who have had COVID are experiencing still, the long haulers, is, support the stress and anxiety that's going along with the physical manifestations. Um, Focusing on the positive is going to only help you. It's only going to help you be in your best shape, in your best position to be able to actually not only enjoy yourself a bit more in terms of your days and be your best self, but actually help you get through the physical aspect as well and be complementary to the different measures you're taking to alleviate those physical symptoms.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it makes sense. It's a hard thing to incorporate when, so many people are just feeling they're dealing with so many medical issues that they've never had to deal with. And, the fact that there are really no expert doctors out there. It's not like you can go to, even at the COVID centers, it's too early to have experts.
Exactly.
How about we talked a lot about sleep. I know that I'm not the only one to have experienced intense insomnia, but the more common story are people with intense fatigue. And it doesn't matter how much sleep they get, they are, taking a shower might wipe them out for the day. How can it be used in that context? And the other sort of related question is, a lot of people are still have shortness of breath, some from actual lung damage from COVID. Can this sort of breathing help? Can what and if you're having trouble breathing, are these still okay things to do, or will it help? Could it hurt?
Yeah, it's a good question. Is a breathing exercise like this going to help someone who has, demonstrated like radiologic damage of their lungs? These breathing exercises, meditation, and mindfulness are not a substitute for anything that's going to help ameliorate the physical kind of true
Oh,
manifestations.
right. No. I didn't mean would. It did, of course,
Right,
nothing is going
right.
to.
But they're going to help. They're going to help
Or
them.
any sort of medical treatment. Absolutely. Then that goes for everything we're talking about.
Of course.
Platform statement. We should have said that at the beginning. But I mean more that if you're having trouble breathing, could doing these exercises possibly exacerbate that?
It's a good question. I mean, like with anything else, you want to not do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. And so you want to take things at your own pace. So let me give you an example. If you're engaging in a breathing exercise and it's 60 seconds and you're starting to feel lightheaded 30 seconds in, stop, pause. You don't need to continue it. You need to do things at your own pace. Like everything else, if the doctor is prescribing to you, or your trainer at the gym is saying, hey, walk a mile, and you're starting to be short of breath after X number of steps, you need to stop.
One of my new favorite lines is from Survivor Corps' good friend, Dr. Mike Joyner at the Mayo Clinic, who is the premier exercise physiologist in the world. And he always says, don't let what you can't do get in the way of what you can do.
That's great. I love that. There's always something that you can engage in. Mindfulness and the abilities to reduce stress and anxiety, for example, everything you've described, every single person can still engage in mindfulness, can still engage in listening, can still engage in being able to close their eyes and focus, right? And learning how to improve self-awareness. Stress makes you tired. Anxiety makes you tired. I know I get tired when I'm stressed out. It takes a lot out of me.
This
And
year,
so, for
exhausting.
sure, if
And
you're
I
already
think we've all
fatigued,
aged a decade this year. I mean, first I was like, y'all should get an extra birthday. You know, like we all missed out on at least one pandemic birthday now, some people on two. And, you know, and then I was like, wait a second.
right?
Maybe we shouldn't be so quick to add on any more birthdays, considering the fact that we've all literally aged at least a decade in the last
Right.
year.
And stress and anxiety plays into that tremendously, right? So regardless of what somebody's energy level is, when you talk about individuals that are fatigued, reducing stress and anxiety can only help. It's not going to make them more tired, right? It's actually going to help them at least make the most of the energy that they have. That's what's really important. And that's what we get at. It can be so transformative from those aspects. And then it can really help you focus on the positives and focus on, okay, I'm fatigued. What can I do to start? What activities can I do that I can enjoy? Now you're going to start doing more and more things. Oh, wait, my energy level is starting to go up. Even qualitatively, it feels that way, right? If you start feeling that it's going up, even if it's not going up, that's going to be a tremendous boost for you, right? And you start seeing a little bit of progress here and there.
I have a great idea on what you can do if you want just a little project, something to focus on. Go to our announcement section, fill out all the polls that are there, and then go to survivorcore.com and sign up for all of our studies and trials. They take only a few minutes to sign up for, and you're doing something incredible for science, for humanity, for yourself, that you will learn along with the scientists. I find that to be one of my stress relievers these days, because you want to feel like you're helping and make something a little bit better out of this mess that we're in.
Completely. I love that. I mean, that's the way we're all contributing to a broader knowledge base and helping everyone, literally everyone. Because the more we understand, the more we can help, the more we can not only help ourselves get better, but help everyone around us get better.
Absolutely. I'm such a strong believer in that. And we'll have a big announcement regarding that with Survivor Core coming your way soon, guys. So stay tuned. Omar, do you have any I know we're up against time. Do you have any final words?
Again, thank you for having me here. I want to say to everyone, you're all fighters. Every single person, those who have COVID, those who had COVID, those who haven't had COVID, we're fighting through one of the most challenging times that probably any of us will ever face. And that in itself is something we should be proud of. That's a sign of the determination, of the strength, of the focus that we all have in us. Let's never forget that. And let's just continue to build upon it. So.
Well, thank you so much, Omar. This was the most relaxing hour of my day. I can say that for sure. And the most enjoyable. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all out there for joining us today. We'll be replaying this as a watch party. As a reminder, do go sign up for those studies, fill out our polls. And the other thing to remember is that we have a new website out. It's called gotcovid.org. It is a portal to get monoclonal antibodies, otherwise known as the Trump treatment, the same monoclonal cocktail that was given to President Trump and Governor Christie and Rudy Giuliani. It is available. It is free. If you are over 65, we can get a nurse to your home to do the transfusion within 24 to 36 hours. Again, it does not matter if you have insurance or not. But the most important thing is that you need to get it as soon as possible after diagnosis, preferably within the first 3 days, and it has to be within the first 10. If you want to get them while you are still feeling good, so you stay feeling good. You don't want to put it off until you're starting to feel pretty crappy, because by the time you get to the hospital, it's too late. You can't get them anymore. So please have a plan. Go to gotcovid.org, share it in all of your networks, share it with your friends and your family. Again, it's free and it could potentially save your life. So pass it on. Thank you so much. And I guess happy anniversary. We're all here together. So onwards and upwards.
Happy anniversary. Thanks for all the hard work you're doing.
Thank you.